Hey, good to see you all again. This, of course, is Dr. Kit, and I'm on here this time, wrapping up this year with a solo show. Okay, wrapping it up with a solo show this year. Well, no, I think I might have one next week. As a matter of fact, I think I do, but I want to wrap up that I've been doing a series on grief, and I just want to wrap that up. It's been about maybe 3, 4 weeks on grief, touching on a number of spots, and and so I just want to do something just a little bit different this evening. Okay, but this, of course, is the Shake Up with Dr. Kit, and you know how we do it on here. It's the same metaphor every time. You know, things, when you mix things up, they settle. The heavy stuff goes to the bottom. The lighter stuff, stay on top. And what happens here is that you kind of you miss the mingling of all the parts to give it this kind of a richness. So that's what the shakeup is all about. It's about it's not about changing the structure of things. It's about changing your perception of yourself by watching this thing. Okay, so that's what it is. It's a reframing of the self. So I'd like you to like, follow, share, and subscribe as much as you possibly can. Like it, follow, share, and subscribe. That is the lifeblood of this and all other podcasts. Okay, so make sure you go ahead and do that. And starting in the new year, okay, because I think next week will be our last show for the year. And so starting in January, what I'd like for you to do is to contact or my team at drkidspeaks@gmail.com, and we'll be happy to get you on the show. And remember, like I say, what you have to say is important. Nobody can say what you have here like you can say it, and so therefore you don't want to be afraid. Otherwise, if you are, then you're going to have to deal with what's written right back here. Where is it? Like back here. All right, back here. The fear of failure is the enemy of success. Those of us who have fear of failing will never go where we need to go. The fear of failure is the enemy of success, like right here. All right. So make sure you do that. All right. So this evening, like I said, I'm going solo, and I don't have any slides this evening. So I'm just going to be talking through this. You know, this is our season of celebration, joy, and peace. You know, we just got through Thanksgiving, and that for a lot of people was a great time. As a matter of fact, we went up to the DMV, and we have families members in the DMV area, but we also have friends. And you know, one of our friends, listen, we're talking about grief in the midst of celebration. What it's like to go through this. It's a kind of a paradox. It's kind of a opposites here. How can you be happy, during celebration when you're grieving? And that's some of the things that we're going to just take a really quick look at this evening. So when we were up at the DMV, we visited a friend. There was a couple who were here with us in our city here, Huntsville, and we all went to church together, and we did a lot of things together. And then sadly, my friend, our friend, passed, and his wife now lives alone. And so when we went up there, we were able to see her. And this happened maybe about 3-4 months ago when he passed, and she's still going through this. And it was Thanksgiving, and there was nothing in her home that kind of depicts celebration or happiness or joy. We went, and my wife and I, we talked, and she said, "Oh, it's so different around here now. It is just so different. And so, we talked to her, and she talked to us, and it was a really good visit. And we took along another friend with us who lives in the DMV, as a matter of fact, and they exchanged numbers, and so they're going to keep in touch with each other. Both are widows, and so they will keep in touch with each other as they try to celebrate, um, go grieving through this time of celebration. The other person that we introduced, our friend up there too, she's been a widow now for several years. I think maybe about 8, 10 years. And one of the things she said, it's still very hard. After all these years, it is still very hard for her to handle this in a time of celebration. Okay, so we're gonna go down through this, and try to make it as palatable as possible for you. And we won't be long on here because I don't want to prolong any kind of pain. And there's this wonderful book. It's a book on ethnicity, and what it talks about is um, the various ways that people celebrate, various ethnic cultures, global cultures, how people celebrate in their different times of celebration. Christmas is universal, but different countries around the world, they have different reason for celebration, which is unique to each of the countries, of course. But the pain is nonetheless very, very much there, and it's hard for people to kind of mix and mingle that. So from a cultural point of view, from the point of ethnicity, where each ethnic group will celebrate um, during this time of grief and loss. Okay. And so we're talking, some of these have very, like I said, very heavy cultural influence because of the globalization of that. Okay. We would like to take some questions, just scrolling along the bottom there. So, because I'm here by myself tonight, please shoot your questions on here. Just about anything. It might be about your own personal issues. It might be something that's very general, but we just thank you anyways for just being on here uh, tonight. Okay. So we're talking about global, how do people celebrate globally? And it's different for everyone, different races, and race and culture are not necessarily the same thing. Okay. In this country here, we have um, we have at some point at the core of this country, we may have the same culture. We do a lot of the same cultural things. The fourth, we celebrate that culturally. Martin Luther King, we celebrate that culturally, and some people may not celebrate that. At the core, we celebrate Thanksgiving. Some people may not believe in Thanksgiving like this. For some cultures here, it might be at a different time. So we go down through that. So there are different types. So those of us who are in the mainstream, we may wonder why some people are not happy and celebrating when the rest of us are happy and celebrating. And it's because it's not their time. And so they're not going to break their grief just to celebrate. And some people will break their grief just to celebrate with us. We'll take a look at that. There's a difference too in the way how gender is a qualifier of how do people celebrate, um, even when they're going through the time of loss. And remember now, earlier on, we had talked about the attachment piece and how with some people, the degree of attachment will determine the degree of loss and pain and separation and so on and so forth. We had talked about that. So in this country here, the African American Black people, have a one way of celebrating. But then I must say this, that not all blacks in this country are native to this country here. So blacks who migrate here from other places, places like the Caribbean countries or Africa or South America, or other places, will have different ways of dealing with this whole business of grieving under certain circumstances. And so the mourning process will be different. And also, the family construct. What do these families look like? How is the construct of the family? Some people come from large families, and a lot of things happen in some of these larger families. And when it happens there, okay, just because a family is large, it does not mean that everybody in the family, okay, has the same attachment to whatever is unavailable to the family system or to one person in the family. So we look at these things and we say, well, how does families grieve, as opposed to how does an individual within the family system grieve? And it may certainly look different, for a number of reasons. So we're looking at race. How does that impact your celebration this time? We're looking at gender here. We're looking at the family construct. How large is this family? Your role. Hey, Michelle. Hello, Dr. Kit. Dr. Kit. Seattle. Okay. Good evening, Tracy Williams. I thank you so much, Tracy, for coming in. And like I said, please put some stuff in on the chat line. Ask some questions, make some comments, because we're talking about grief during the time of celebration. We are in a time of celebration. We call it holiday season right now, but it is a time when a lot of people find it a way to celebrate. Now, let me say this here. It's not just an antidote. That's not what it is. But some people wait for times of celebration in order to distract them from the grief that they're going through. And I want to say this again. I said it before in a different way, that aborted grief is what we call prolonged grief, because you can only abort it for so long. Aborted grief is like taking a Tylenol for a headache, but you really need, if you want to deal with a headache, you got to get to the core and the cause of the headache. So we're back now to the family construct. Now, everybody, depending on the age, what's the age of people in the various families? Because certainly those that are older may have more reason for celebrating in a particular way. Those that are younger, okay, have to be acculturated into how the older families and family members in this particular family structure system, how do they celebrate? And the younger ones may say, well, that's not even cool. So now we may have conflict in the way people celebrate, during this time, compounded by the grieving process that some people may be going through. So the age then will make a difference, can make a profound difference in the way that this is done. I know that when I was a lot younger, okay, for me, celebration was fun time. And everybody loses people on their way up through life. Okay, it just don't happen. You don't just start losing people when you turn 40, 50, 60, stuff like that. But people lose all the way up. But from when I was a lot younger, it was easier for me to shake off the loss. And one of the ways I shook off the loss was to become engaged outside of myself by creating things that would excite me or give me pleasure. So that's another way some people do this. But remember now, when you avoid going through grief, you can just prolong it because it might come back at you in another way. So we're going through this family construct. What's your role in the family? Who does what? What if the person who was the mover and the shaker in the family is no longer available? How is the family now going to reorganize, reframe itself around the celebration time? It could be excuse me, it could be a wedding, it could a wedding anniversary, it could be a birthday anniversary, it could be anything. How do we do this when one person was the one who organized this? Okay, so the absence of these people may make the celebration less happy than it could be if the other person was here. It comes up, man, oh, so and so, nobody made cornbread like grandma made cornbread, or so and so, they were the life of the party. The life of the party is not here, but the celebration still go on. Why? Because you still need to take care of yourself. There is a way of how does socioeconomic impact the way people grieve going through this time of celebration. Socioeconomics, one of the big factor in how that can impact the way people grieve going through socioeconomically might be the lack of funds. If a person is missing, or if something happened that there is not enough funds available to do what was normally done and or to make plans, for something new or change the order of things. So it can also mean that the way you grieve during this time of celebration will be different. So in other words, then, we're coming up, we just got through Thanksgiving. So we're coming up on Christmas now. And so somebody is missing. The life of the party is missing. That's one thing. We just talked about that. Socioeconomically, what if you have to spend a whole lot of money to take care of some other business, related to the grief, and now you're short, and the person or one person who would normally take care of that, they're no longer available and funds are tied up somewhere else. How do you then celebrate when you're grieving the absence of certain important ingredients that people need? How do you do that? All right. So we're talking about that. So how do you celebrate? How do you celebrate when you are in this house and this person or these people that used to be there, or listen, I'm gonna bring it right down to something else. For some people, there is this person, who loves dogs and lost a couple of dogs, and she calls them her fur babies. Her fur babies. Now, when she called these dogs her fur babies, she's no longer calling them a dog like, well, this is a dog out there. But fur babies mean that they are so close to this person that it takes on some kind of a human connection and personality now. So now, how do you grieve when you would go out and walk your dog or do whatever it is you want to do with your fur babies? These are some other ways that the lack of these fur babies, doggies and cats, okay, can also impact the way you grieve during a time of celebration. All right. So, okay, Tracy, thank you so much. How do you initiate a conversation regarding the topic of grief? Example, the loss of a partner that has never been discussed by siblings. The loss of a parent, the loss of a parent, but has never been discussed by siblings. How do you initiate this conversation? Well, Tracy, one of the things you might want, and just keep that up there, one of the things that you might want to ask yourself, what was it about the family system, the sibling group, you know, that made you not discuss the possibility of a loss of a parent, especially if the sibling group was more mature, like in their 20s or even their 30s or late teens. You know, you begin to think about, you know, the mortality of an older parent, okay, of an older parent or a grandparent, which you're very close to. And so, you know, Tracy, I wonder then, you know, what is it about the siblings that would make them not talk about this? Is it because they think that maybe if you talk about this, then you have to deal with the anticipatory grief, anticipating the grief that will come just by talking about it? You know, do you begin to tap into that loss prior to the loss getting here? You know, will it kind of take you to a place where you don't want to go? Does it take you to a place of denying the fact that it will happen and the pain that's associated with that? Tracy, it's a kind of a complex question because you know, now we'd have to sit down and talk to all of these the siblings and say, hey, listen, this is an important matter here. But there is something about this group that's saying, listen, we don't want to talk about this. And so, and you know, Tracy, there is a it could become kind of a irking, if I can use that word, if one person want to talk about it and the other people, other siblings don't want to talk about it. And then the person who wants to talk about it, you know, they're talking about it, getting their needs met to talk about it so that they can prepare themselves. But others are saying, I don't want to deal with this. I just wait until it happens. And when they wait until it happens, they basically just fall apart. But the one who wants to talk about it, want to be prepared for this, you know, they are more stable when these things happen because they know it's going to happen and they prepare themselves for it to happen. So how do you initiate a conversation, Tracy? It is very difficult to initiate this conversation. Some that are maybe on one end of the spectrum say, I don't want to talk about this. I just want to talk about this. You know, why don't they want to talk about it? Because to talk about it may mean that that's going to tap into something that they are grieving right now. All right. So I don't know. The others that are at the other end of the spectrum say, yeah, we'd like to talk about it. And so now the sibling group may be split, you know, maybe split on this. Okay. So you know, an example of that, you know, would be, say, and there no kind of a clear example because it's not going to kind of fit. Everything may not fit what, you know, what you're talking about. But the conversation here, it would be if somebody want to talk about it, like I said, and they're not ready to talk about it, it could cause friction between them. Okay. Now, we also want to think about, to initiate this conversation, what if one person, say a family member, has already preceded the family in death? How do you then regard this topic of grief? Who was closest to who? Who is still going through this? So we think about all of these things, and I can be saying all this, and none of this or some of this may be very concrete in terms of how do we go through this? What kind of an internal support do you have on this without fracturing the family? You know, some people, you know, who was very close to, say, grandma or grandpa, and you know, on grandma and grandpa, one is sick. Okay. When sick. They don't want to talk about this, but because they're so close to grandma and grandpa that to do this, it's just going to exacerbate the fact that they won't be here, and I don't want to have to deal with this now. So I will wait on this. And so trying to initiate a conversation is difficult. You have to know your siblings. You have to know who would be more likely to be supportive of this, okay, and who will not be supportive of this. And when even the fact of initiating this, you may find some people will just say, listen, I'm out of here. I really don't want to talk about this. And if you suggest it before they talk about it, you may get into arguments before you even get to talk about it. So it's not so easy to do, because everybody may be at a different place and time in this. And that is the reality of grief. That is really the reality of grief. How do you do this and get everybody to be on board at the same time? And you probably will not be able to do that. But the person who want to talk about it, they don't get their needs met. And if it's forced, then the other person, feel invaded. And so now we have more fractures within the sibling group. So something you got to tiptoe your way around. And like I said, know who will buy into this and maybe create a coalition in this, not to get it done, but to say, how can we talk about this? How do we need to if you have 3 or 4 siblings, you may have 1 or 2 who's willing to talk about it. Well, get together. Those 2 will get together and say, how can we plan this to make it happen? If they're not willing, can we talk about it and be supportive here to ourselves? So it's not an easy thing to do. It's not easy, and it's harder for me to talk about it than it would be for me to talk people through it, because then I could get to say and talking to, well, there is something about you that seem like you're not willing to talk about it. So can you talk about your unwillingness or what it means to you? It'd be a lot easier, because then we have participation from those who want to do it and those who don't want to do it. All right. So we were talking about I hope, Tracy, that might help. I know it was a long thing, because it wasn't so quick and let's do it like this. Talking about grief in times of celebration. Celebration means everybody want to be happy, but there's always something that defy the probability of happiness continuously all the time, even in the best of situation. Okay, some of the things that can also impact grieving in the midst of celebration would be, education, for instance. How well is this person versed on grieving process and themselves? What is it about me that's making me know that what's appropriate and what is not appropriate in the grieving process here as we go through this in a time of celebration? It is hard to mix oil and water. It doesn't mix. The only time oil and water mix is when you shake it up, and even then it's particled. It's not a clear mixing. You have particles of oil, trying to make its way into the water, and the water is saying, no, I don't want to deal with this thing here. And the oil just goes back and starts swimming on top. Okay, so what do you know? Not so much about the process, but what do you know about yourself? How educated are you about who you are in what can be good for you as you go through this grieving process? What about about spiritual? What's your spiritual roots like? We in this country and Black people around the world, because of slavery, we found solace in the church. We found solace reading the Bible. We found solace singing. We found solace talking to God. We become very spiritual. And especially those of us who had nothing else to lean on, we leaned heavily on God. And so we discovered then that grieving in a time of celebration, it is a mixed concept that we're dealing with. How can we our users, how can we be breathing in and breathing out at the same time? How can we be grieving and celebrating all at the same time? And it's hard to do that, because sometimes we just don't know where to go. We're kind of caught in the middle of the river. So those of us who have a strong spiritual background, we tap into that. because we can tap into that at all times. When we're happy, we're praising the Lord. When we want some things, we're praying to the Lord. When things happen to us that we don't like, we go to the Lord with our tears and everything else, so we can and ask the Lord, can you get me through this so I can have a sense of happiness through this? Why? Because my pain is more than I can bear right now. I really need to be around people, but I can't be around people because, and you have all kinds of reason, And so we're talking about the recency of the loss, I just jotted a few things down in capacity to handle change. Change here again will come because how do you behave in a group of people? You're happy, you're grieving, your grief is not as deep as theirs, and you're having all the fun in the world, and you find somebody else who is sitting down, and maybe they're there because they want to be there, they don't want to be alone, but they don't necessarily want to celebrate. Okay, so they reach out to a support system, a support group, a support family. They don't like to be alone. There's something about them that don't like to be alone or deal with this loss. And I know that I'm focusing more primarily now on the loss of a person, but it could be anything. How do you celebrate? How do you celebrate when you just came back from when you just came back from the doctor with the worst medical news possible? How do you celebrate? How do you go to birthday parties? How do you go to Thanksgiving? How do you prepare for Christmas? How do you prepare for all of these things when the news is not good? How do you celebrate outside, but inside you are falling apart? Dichotomy. So now it's kind of a push pull or both pulling. I'm not feeling good. I want to go, but I want to go and hang out, but I can't because I don't want to look like I'm a hypocrite. And so you find yourselves in some of these situation here where bad news, a loss of jobs, a number of things, you just lost your house, all kinds of things. You're grieving in a time of celebration. And of course, what happens is when you are grieving, some people may just don't want to be around people. And the phone keeps ringing and say, dude, come on, man. Are you coming? Come on. We know you've done this. We know you've had a loss. We know you've had some bad news. But why don't you just come on out? Maybe you'll feel better if you're around people. They don't know if you're going to feel better if you're around people. You're doing what you feel you need to do. And maybe that is to be by yourself and to take care of yourself and to get in touch with what's going on inside yourself. Because when you go out and you are celebrating, okay, you may be interrupting something that is inevitable. And then when the party's over, a couple of 3 hours later, you're now back by yourself, and you come off your high, and you don't just come down slow, you plummet. You just plummet. Some people just do that, and then you got to deal with that kind of a pain. Okay, and so the socializing then takes you into degrees of socializing, spending time by themselves, people depending on your presence to enhance their enjoyment. They just, oh man, I wish, can we just go and get something? Oh, would you please come on over? We always enjoy you being here, but they are not going through what you're going through. So we're talking about grief during the time of celebration, amidst the time of celebration. How do you deal with these two dichotomies, differences? Which is hard to kind of consolidate, if you will. Okay, and so spending time by themselves. A lot of people want to spend time by themselves. As a matter of fact, it is important for you to spend time by yourself, because people will not always be available when you want them to be available if you become people dependent. You don't be, you know, I don't want you to hear me saying that we shouldn't, but I would avoid being people dependent, because when you are dependent on people to get you through your grief, they might, but you don't always know the cost to them, emotional cost, social cost, all kind of cost that comes to it, just to be there for you. So while it's good to have people that you can depend on, it's also good for you to develop your own sense of independence as you go through your loss of whatever it is that you're going through. Okay, and for some people, then it might be moments of withdrawing from other people, grieving through the. You may just have to say, "Listen, I just can't make it. I just can't make it." And other people will be very concerned about you and say, "Well, would you mind if I come spend some time with you?" And if you do mind, go ahead and say, "Well, I really wanted to spend this by myself." Why do some people want to spend um, times of celebration by themselves? Because there was a special relationship with a person, place, or thing that is no longer available. And so that person may just want to have the time to work on themselves with that. Listen, don't forget, Tracy, I know you dropped something in the chat there. Other people, please drop some stuff in there. We'll work on that as much as possible. I won't keep you much longer. Okay, people depending on your presence, yes, moments of withdrawal, and then there are triggers. There are triggers, which mean that some people will not go to certain places, don't want to see certain people, don't want to do certain things. People, places, or things which triggers you during this time. I've heard people say, man, I was talking to somebody and they lost their spouse, and at church this past weekend, we had Handel's Messiah, and the person said, when my spouse was, I'm using the word spouse, when my spouse was alive, we used to love to go to Handel's Messiah. I love Handel's Messiah, but it's not the same without my spouse. Enjoying one thing, but not enjoying it as much because a major ingredient is now not available. We're talking about grieving during a time of celebration. Loving Handel's Messiah, loving doing this, loving cooking together, loving going to our favorite hideaway, our favorite place. We would go to this hotel or this resort every time, but now the joy of having a spouse to go with and the joy of being at the place, those are two different kind of joys now. Being at the place, me with the person, and the things you did with each other, those three things now, those things are no longer available to you. So now we're grieving during a time of joy. And other people may say, hey, listen, we're going to this place and such. Who knows what going to this place is going to do to you. So again, take ownership of the way you feel at all times, grieving, going through a time of celebration. Take full responsibility for that, because no one else can do that for you. Okay, so you gotta make sure you you can manage. Don't manage the triggers. I know that it's easy for us to try to manage things outside the self. I've said this a time, and I'm going to say it again. Please don't get bogged down trying to manage people, place, and things. The thing to do is to have what I call the mirror talk in the midst of the celebration, the mirror talk, and talk to yourself. This is how you deal with you, because there's always going to be moments when you cannot not be with somebody. Right, okay, it's gonna happen. It's just inevitable. Otherwise, you become, like I said, people or person dependent at a cost to the person to take care of your needs when they have their own needs to take care of. And another situation is like this. You may, I know a lot of things, so I'm not just making up stories. You know, there was. The family would travel places, travel and go travel to different places, times of celebration, and then something happened. A major person, everybody's major, but a person, it was a matriarch in the family, was not able to travel for the family gathering, but then somebody else couldn't travel because there was a brand new baby on board. So now we have a new baby and a matriarch who neither of which can travel so freely because of packing up for the kids and doing all this thing and finding a way for the matriarch, who is now incapacitated, to go. So now the celebration has been kind of a, it's not going to be as like it needs to be, because somebody won't be there. And I always keep saying it, somebody or something won't be there. All right. So 6'5", thank you. Do you think it is unhealthy to still not want to be around people during the holidays 15 years after I have after I have experienced a death? I don't know. Thank you for that, 6'5". I don't know if I can say it is unhealthy. I think some people, and I've heard people say, well, listen, it's been 15 years. It's time for you to get over it. How do you get over pain? You just don't know. And they don't know what that person meant to you. They really don't know. And for some people, there was this kind of an inseparable, deep interdependency that was there. Either they took care of you, you took care of them, or you took care of each other by doing different things. And so every time these, especially the anniversary time comes around, it's very difficult, because anniversary would trigger things about about the situation. My mom is she's buried in Hempstead, New York. And with the time I go to New York, which is not very often these days, because I live way down here now. And it's been a long time. But I just wonder. And I just think about. I don't. It doesn't cripple me. But I just wonder about. And then at those times, I go into thoughts about my mom, what she looked like, her last days, the fun times we used to have, all of those things. And yeah, I would still want to be around her, because she did some really good things, during times of celebration that nobody else did. So yeah, if I don't have a problem saying that, man, I wish my mom was here. As old as I am, I don't have a problem saying that. So 6'5", do I think it's unhealthy? I don't think it's unhealthy. The question here is this: how do you manage yourself during the episodes that you're going through? If there's anything that's going to be unhealthy, it's how you do that. What do you not do that you could do? What do you do that you maybe should not be doing? Okay. But nobody will know that but you. So want to be around people during the holidays. So there's just too many dynamics for me to say, listen, it's a clear cut yes or a clear cut no. I have experienced a death. And so therefore, So therefore, nobody knows what that death looks like. And so if you don't want to be around people, then you and you alone knows the reason why and what is costing you to not be around people. And there are other people 15 years later that has migrated into your life, or you have invited into your life, or you have gotten into their lives. And so what happens when this time comes around of the anniversary during this time of celebration, especially if it's during this time of celebration like now, you know, and you are not feeling the way you want to feel, they might feel shunned for some reason. And they may even get a little bit angry at you to say, well, listen, it's been so long. And every time this time comes around, you know, I feel like you have abandoned me when I don't know what to do. I can't help you to get through this. And now, so now they are feeling abandoned. So now, because of your loss, and you're trying to deal with your loss, you're not available to them. So now they are now having a loss because you're dealing with your loss. Now they got to deal with their loss, and now we have separation. You know, and so it's not so easy. It's not so easy to deal with. You know, it really is not. But it's not. You're welcome. You're welcome. Hold on, Denise. Desiree, but what I'm saying is it's not so easy. So just beware of when people tell you what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Don't don't get upset because you think that you're doing something wrong. You're not doing something wrong. Desiree said grief is a life. Oh, Desiree, yes, it is a lifelong process. Thank you, Desiree, and it is indeed a journey, and there will be dark spots. And I know we were driving up to Nashville, and we were going. It was in the dark, and as often as we drive to Nashville, you know, there are certain parts of the road where we just don't. And it's dark. We can't see around corners. Light don't bend like that anymore. They might, but so we have to wait until we get to certain place along the journey. Along the journey, so we can see more clearly where we're going. And sometimes we can't see around this curve, this corner. And sometimes when we get to this curve or this corner and we want to see around this thing, we can say, man, I hate this place here. Why? Because I can't see what's around the corner. And so there's just so much. You're absolutely right. Grieving process, it is a lifelong journey from which you don't graduate. What happens here is you begin to overcome the part of you that is in pain, and you learn how to manage the self. Grief is not about managing things. Grief is not about missing the person per se. It is about missing the piece of you that is attached to this person, and the person is no longer here for you to get back in touch with the piece of you that's in them because it's gone with them. Therefore, therefore, you're missing not just the person, but you're missing a part of yourself. So it becomes a long, tedious, lifelong journey. Lifelong journey. This is why some people, annually they make the trek to somebody's gravesite. And I was talking to somebody, a client, and I think it was last week, and they say, listen, I go every year, and I put flowers on this. Somebody said, listen, sometimes I go 2 or 3 or 4 times a year. I go up and make sure the flowers are in good shape. And the person said, listen, I have 6 siblings, and I'm the only one who will go to the gravesite of this family member and put flowers on the grave. They said, listen, I will not go out of town during this time because I am going there. And he said, and the person, it gives me such peace because I put their favorite flower there. And the person said this to me, and I'm going to say what the person said, because Because when I put their favorite flower there, it makes me think they are resting more peacefully. I'm not going to say they're right. I'm not going to say they're wrong. People do things and have all these different kinds of beliefs about how they grieve. And so we need to let them grieve the way they want to, as long as they're not going to hurt themselves and hurt others. Be supportive of the way they grieve, as long as they're not going to be harmful to the self or harmful to somebody else. Allow people to grieve, okay? And then the last thing that I'm going to go through here is the recovering process. The recovering process is when you can get to the place where the people, place, or things does not trigger you to where it incapacitates you. And when you can reinvest. The recovering process is when you are able to reinvest in people, places, or things, all right, and begin to enjoy life again at another level that is satisfying. That is the recovering process. And going through the recovering process, you know how well you are recovering based on the degree to which you can reinvest, not in people, place, or things, but reinvest in yourself, investing in other people. We always invest in the self first. So when you invest in yourself, and it goes like this: I would like to do this. Reason, it makes me feel good. I want to do it with so-and-so. Why? Because when I'm with so-and-so, we have a good time. So I'm going to reinvest in my happiness. And part of me reinvesting in my happiness is to do it with somebody else, because they get happy, I get happy, we get happy. That is your capacity to reinvest. Reinvest in the self. Then you know that you are recovering, but it does not mean that you forget about the loss that you had. Doesn't mean that. Listen, I want to thank you for the time that you spent with me and that you allowed me to spend with you dealing with this. So I spent a lot of weeks dealing with grief, and I just closed it out as I wanted to talk about grieving during times of celebration, which I know is hard for some people. If it's hard for some people and you need to talk, just go to my website and we'll or my email, shoot me an email. We can talk through some of these things as much as we're able. And or you have good family members, good friends, but this I would encourage you not to do. Please do not do anything that could be potentially long-term or short-term harmful to yourself. Please do not do anything that would make you unavailable to people who depend on you, even though you're going through your pain. Okay, so we don't want to compound different levels of pain with different levels of people. So stay safe. Stay safe. Have yourself, especially during these times of celebration, have yourself a safety plan. I'm not talking about because you're going to hurt yourself, but an emotional safety plan. If I'm feeling this way, who do I need to call? If such and such is not available, who else is on my list? Have yourself a safety plan, so that at all times you're okay with you by yourself, and you can be okay with being with other people when you want other people to be there with you. Okay, so please have a safety plan. We don't talk about safety plan when we're talking about grieving, but it is a very important component of the grieving process because it deals with the losses. Okay, and so you're not just when you're going through your loss, you're not just using substitutes. You never want to go through a substitutionary process when it comes to grieving, but otherwise you'll always be looking for a substitute. And each time you want a substitute that's better than the last substitute, which is better than the last. And so you're always going up and up and up, looking for greater, bigger, grander things to do what? Just to make you feel better, but you're not working it through. You're not working through. So make sure you have a really good safety plan. Okay. So thank you all so much, so much. I look forward to seeing you all. I'm going to be on again next week because I have a guest next week. I have a guest next week, really good guest. So please come on back. But I will not be talking about grief work again. So I'll see you next week. And I think next week will be my last week this year. And then of course I will talk more about it next week. Then I'll be able to see you in January. Okay. So thank you so much. Be blessed. Have yourselves a wonderful night.